I wonder, sort of after this sort of Me Too movement, this kind of this awareness of the behavior of men, how that would have played like Craig's storyline if that had happened today, because he was, pretty toxic character. I was obviously very protective of him because it was an extension of me. And in fact, I had a lot of issue with that cheating storyline. I really, I didn't like it. I remember talking to the producers and saying, I don't like this. Like, I don't want to do this.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Pop Culture Planet, a video podcast centered around diverse voices and representation in Hollywood. I'm your host, Kristen Maldonado, a TV film critic, content creator, and champion for inclusion. Today is the 20th anniversary of Degrassi, The Next Generation, one of the most impactful and groundbreaking teen shows of all time. And I'm so excited to be joined by Jake Epstein, who played Craig Manning on the show, to talk about what it was like for him working on it, looking back 20 years later, the impact that it had on him, music, and his career. I'm a huge Degrassi stan, so this was a really exciting interview for me. I hope you guys enjoy it. So as you know, October, 20 years of Degrassi, The Next Generation.
Right. I actually didn't know. I knew it was 20 years this year. I didn't know it was October. I guess that's when it first aired. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. So, for you, like, just thinking, like, this is like 20 years that you've kind of, been a part of this legacy. What does that feel like? Are you going to maybe do anything to celebrate?
It's funny. I didn't think about it, but now I feel a little bit old, which is not something I've ever really thought about. Man, I guess we should. I guess there should be cake or something. There should be like a dessert of some kind. This is going to get me excited for October 2021. I'll probably connect with some of the people on the show and maybe check in and see what everyone's up to. And everyone will say, we feel old. So thanks for reminding me about this.
You're welcome. Yeah. Are you guys still close? Or do you still keep in touch with people?
It's kind of like real high school. There are some people that I've remained very close with. Some people I was really close to and have kind of lost touch a little bit. Other people we were like, got along really well, but maybe, I don't know, didn't like hang out after sets. And because there's a lot of years, it's 20 years and a lot of cast members, there's a lot of people. So there's lots of sort of different combos of people. But for the most part, I mean, everyone got along very well. There was not like any kind of drama happening when we filmed it. Everyone was super low key, super down to earth.
Who was your like little crew?
I was a bit of a floater. I sort of had I did most of my scenes with Lauren and Stacy and Adamo and Aubrey Drake. But they were all 1 year older than me, except for Stacy, or 1 grade older than me, which was like, I was younger. So and Shane, who played Spinner. So we would kind of hang out sometimes. And then there was sort of a crew that was like Melissa, who played Ashley, and Jake Goldsby, and Miriam and Cassie and Mike LaBelle, and that was sort of like the kind of grungy rock and roll crew that I would hang with. Jake Goldsby I played music with a little bit. He played Toby. Paula Brancati has become one of my best friends, even though our characters had nothing to do with each other. We never filmed a scene together.
But you guys were in Dog Sees God together, right?
Yeah, we did. We worked together a couple times, and she's so lovely. So she's become definitely one of my best friends. Delmar, who played Danny, has become a really dear friend, and also I think we had like 1 scene together, but we've sort of worked together since, and he's such a lovely guy. That's kind of the crew.
That's awesome. Now looking back, do you remember what your audition was like?
I do, because I remember it because they had me audition so many times. Once you audition once and you get a call back, you really want it. So you start being like, I don't really care what's going to happen. And then you really want the role. So I remember going in the first time and Linda Schuyler, who's the creator and the producer of the show, interviewed us on camera. That was sort of the bulk of the audition. I think we had a monologue. So I had a Craig monologue, and she gave me some really great notes. I was really nervous. I was wearing a Colorado Avalanche kind of dorky sweatshirt. My hair was just I was just very underwhelmingly presented. and they gave me a callback. And when I went in for the callback, Pat Mastroianni, who played Joey Jeremiah, who is from the like OG Degrassi back in the 80s, he was like the star of that show, and then was my stepdad on The Next Generation. And I'd never really seen the show before. So he was there in the waiting room. I thought he was just the reader. Like there's, they'll hire a reader, someone to come in and, read for the audition. He came up to me, and there was a bunch of guys who all kind of looked like me, like dark hair, looking a little bit nervous. And he like pointed at me and was like, you want to run lines? And I'm like, sure. Thinking like, oh, the reader, I don't know, wants to run lines. Great. Not realizing like that's Joey Jeremiah from the show. So we ran lines, we joked around a bunch, and then I went in and slowly realized who he was. And that was such a gift that we'd kind of practiced beforehand. And I have no idea why he asked me to run lines with him beforehand. It's like one of those weird things. I asked him afterwards, and he said I looked the most nervous of everyone. So he's like, you look so nervous. So I just thought I'd run lines with the nervous kid. And the nervous kid ended up getting the part. So it's, kind of crazy. Then I came in again. There was a screen test with some of the other actors on the show. It was a pretty extensive audition process, and then got the call. I was just elated to get to do it.
That's awesome. I mean, that must have been fate. He probably, I don't know, maybe he knew. He was like, this looks like the kid that's going to play my stepson.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. I literally have no idea. Just kind of threw me a bone there and gave me that gift.
Going into that role, I mean, I remember just like you had that 2-part episode. It was so, like, I don't know, it was just so iconic, like watching you come into this role. Like, was it weird coming in the second season, like when people were already there? And, what was your reaction to just like hearing other people's thoughts on Craig?
Yeah, it was all kind of overwhelming, and there was a lot of little gifts thrown my way, like how I auditioned. I think the role was such an exciting role for me. I was kind of a child actor, but I'd never really done anything with any kind of meat or any kind of substance. And here was this really misunderstood kid in this really troubling circumstance. He had an abusive father, and he was really likable. I really liked him. And I never really auditioned for anything where I felt like I connected to it in a deep way, and I found it really moving. And I thought he was cool. Like, I thought he was cooler than me. So I also found that was really kind of exciting. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if they were sort of ready to write a character like that in the first season. So I think it was kind of a gift that I never auditioned for any of the. I don't know who I would have auditioned for in the first season. Probably Spinner or Jimmy or something like that. And I got to come in with these series of featured episodes. The opening episodes of season 2, which it was kind of like a bit of an indie film. Like, there was a whole story, and I was this new character. No one knew anything about me. The director for those episodes was a guy named Bruce McDonald, who was known in Canada for making these really cool indie films. One of them was this movie called Hardcore Logo, and Hugh Dillon, who ended up being cast as my abusive father, was the lead of Hardcore Logo. And I was a huge fan of it. It was a really amazing little movie. So I really felt like I was on like a movie set, even though it was like a couple episodes of Degrassi. They really took it seriously, and Hugh Dillon was such a good actor and was so scary on camera. So the whole experience was just kind of out of body, and then people really took to the character, and the writers sort of congratulated me after we shot it. They thought I did good work, and they wanted to keep writing for the character. So it was just really kind of exciting. You can't really plan for anything like that. You kind of just are in the right place at the right time, and if you're surrounded by the right people, you kind of just go along for the ride.
Was his storyline about being bipolar something that you knew like well in advance? Because it just feels like they did such a great job of like really slowly building to that.
Right.
Like,
yeah, they did. They really did. No, so there was nothing about Craig being bipolar in the beginning. I was always convinced that like I don't know, maybe as a young actor, I was overacting a little bit. And so they were like, he's bipolar. It's like kind of like, no, but I think based on, in all seriousness, the producer, Linda, took me into her office, I think in the second or third season, and said kind of based on Craig's actions, it would make a lot of sense that he's bipolar and that it's a genetic disorder. There's probably a good chance that his father was bipolar, and that could have explained why he behaved the way that he behaved. And I didn't really know what bipolar disorder was. So it was a hugely educational experience. And I remember Linda brought in a psychologist to talk to me about it, and I got to sort of do some research, and it really made a lot of sense based on who Craig was and his actions and his sort of impulsiveness and his erratic sort of anger and kind of changes in personality, and that, you know, there never really been at that time like a teenager, like a bipolar disorder portrayed in a teenager on television. So it was a really cool experience as an actor, and afterwards I got a lot of letters from a lot of kids dealing with something like that or something similar, and really liked being represented like that. And I feel like the writing was pretty good. It really, it showed the consequences of it. It showed this teenager who didn't know what was going on, fighting, wanting to take medication, which I think is a lot of truth. So yeah, again, another gift to kind of to get that thrown my way.
You're tackling so many, tough storylines in Degrassi. Like, they were known for going there. Was there ever times where like it was really difficult, or that you felt pressure to kind of like handle these situations in a certain way, especially because like you're a young person playing these roles that like other young people are dealing with?
I mean, the right answer to that question is yes. But in truth, at that time, we were all wanting the best storylines. Like, we were all these kind of young, ambitious actors who wanted desperately for our characters to be in trouble, because that was the most challenging, the most fun episodes to shoot. As horrible as it is to say, because of course it's like the most serious storylines that they dealt with. But we wanted them. I mean, we'd go into read-throughs and we'd always check who got the freeze frame, is what we called it. A lot of episodes would end on like a freeze of one character. And it was usually the character whose episode was kind of the lead of that episode. So we would all flip to the last page. And the writers started writing mock last pages of just like characters dying or going off to another planet, or, So, was there pressure to portray it? Of course, but that, there was pressure every day. We were on this show that we knew was being watched by a lot of people. I was one of the few cast members who went to a normal high school while I was shooting. A lot of other cast members went to this school in Toronto for like child actors and Olympic athletes, and it was mostly online. But I was in school with the audience of Degrassi. So if people liked an episode or didn't like something, people would like tell me. So I was very much aware that the things I was doing were being seen not just by, millions of people in the US, but my high school, which to me was the scariest audience. So I definitely felt a bit of pressure, but it was more excitement. And again, when I was given an opportunity to do something a little bit risky and a little bit dramatic, and I was really fortunate that they did throw a lot of really, really challenging storylines my way. Sometimes maybe not to the most realistic degree, like the number of unfortunate things that happened to Craig, but I just, that's why I loved acting, was to get to kind of jump in with both feet and just really embrace something, learn about something new. Like bipolar disorder, I really felt like I got to represent that issue and kind of hold it as a badge of pride, and really trying to represent a lot of people that I knew were dealing with that. So it was more excitement when you got a serious storyline.
Now, you mentioned, everyone wants that big storyline. So were there any that you were like, man, I wish they had given me that one? Or like, oh, I feel really lucky that I got this one.
I remember there was there was a draft of a script for where Craig was maybe having something romantic, possibly with Marco, and then it was quickly scrapped. I think it might have been more for just Marco's audition. I don't know how seriously they were considering that. But I always thought that, I was like, oh, that would have tracked. I feel like that would have tracked with who Craig was. He might have wanted to explore something else, or I don't know. But yeah, they never went for that. I mean, yeah, there were. I mean, if anything, there were probably too many storylines. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, I don't think there was anything that I was wishing they did. I mean, I spoke pretty freely with the writers. I know a lot of other people in the cast did about what was happening at our high schools. I remember talking to the writers about a party that happened in my neighborhood growing up where a kid got stabbed, and it was like random. Like, it wasn't like there was beef. Like, it just kind of escalated. And I'm not taking any credit for this because I think they were already planning on doing something about it, but I know that they ended up writing a storyline for JT, where JT got stabbed at a party. So we were always kind of pushing storylines, and I might have pushed storylines about drugs. You know, I don't know if that's what started the sort of cocaine storyline for Craig, but I know that, you know, there was a lot of kids I knew who were dealing with this. It was a really big thing, and I maybe thought it was weird Degrassi wasn't tackling that issue. So yeah. And if anything, I really, again, it's weird to say, but I enjoyed the serious storylines probably more than the sort of like love triangle romantic storylines. I think I was a little more nervous to shoot those scenes maybe than to shoot something really dramatic and serious.
Like you mentioned, JT's death. You were on the show during some of those like monumental like moments that like shook people. Like, I remember standing in my room staring at the TV as JT like died and being like, what the heck? Or like the school shooting.
Right.
Was it like really tense on set those days, or was it like, you know, like you said, like it was just like we were doing these crazy storylines that, you know, are taking things to different levels?
I mean, every week was an intense thing we were doing. The one episode that stood out for me was the school shooting episode. I think I have a memory of that one episode feeling different on set. There was really, the show had never really tackled something like that before. And it was there were so many school shootings at that time in the US in particular, and in Canada as well. And it's such a complicated thing. And I actually wasn't in the read-through that day. I don't remember why. So I wasn't there, but I remember everyone coming out and telling me what the storyline was, and that Jimmy gets shot. And Aubrey was like, I was like, are they killing you off the show? And he's like, I don't know. So there was this kind of like, Game of Thrones style, like any of us could go at any moment. And what was so amazing about that episode is that the whole season was kind of a fallout of that storyline. It wasn't like they did it and then kind of moved on to the next story of the week. That storyline instigated so many other storylines for that whole season. So I really thought it was a really amazing, gutsy piece of writing for a teen show, for a little teen soap opera, and that it was handled really well. Ephraim Ellis, who played the shooter, went to my high school, was a friend of mine. He was a few years older than me, and so it was cool. He was a friend of mine, and he was on set. We knew each other. I was sort of the one who knew him the best, probably, and I just thought he did such a great job, because he was so scary and he really went there, but at the same time you really understood. It wasn't like a black and white thing where he was the evil kid, and they really kind of showed why someone might get to that place. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer. That was the storyline that was like, ooh, like this is a different thing that's happening. This is really serious, and everyone kind of felt like they were on their game.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said about just like these storylines just like spiraling off into all these other stories. Like I feel like that's what makes Degrassi so incredible is that like first of all, you're connecting back to these people who were kids in the 80s. It's like now you're following in the next generation their kids. But then like the storylines, you know, really like it wasn't like, okay, we're this happened and then the next episode we're over it. It's like, no, look at all these things. Like it really feels like a real community that you're watching, that you've been watching since like their parents were kids. And I feel like that's why people get so invested in like why it's one of the most groundbreaking teen shows of our time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think people really got to feel like they were growing up with the characters. And like you said, when characters would go through changes, Craig was diagnosed bipolar. That affected. It wasn't like that was ignored then. He was bipolar then, so that really affected him and his decisions and his storylines. Jimmy was in a wheelchair, and that was a huge turn. You know, Manny, who started wanting to dress in more sort of scandalous outfits. She felt she wanted to do that. That really she changed, and so you really got to see teenagers change, which is what happens when you're that age. You're desperately trying to figure out who you are, and you're really open to trying things. So I do, yeah. I think people related to it, and the fact that we were all pretty much the age that we were playing, which I think was so fresh, was so nice and so believable. That we were kids who didn't have all this life experience. We were begging, you know, makeup to cover all of our zits, which the producers loved. They would be like, no makeup on the zits. Like, we want to see it. We want to see these kids be kids and go through things that kids go through. So I think that's why a lot of people appreciated it and connected to it.
You mentioned Manny going through her, you know, transformation, one of the most iconic scenes. I mean, we saw Cassie Steele just, what was it, last year, recreate that moment on TikTok with the blue thong. So funny.
I know.
So, you know, looking back now at those relationships that your character had with Manny and Ashley and Ellie, what do you think about that now?
They were all great storylines, and each I think it made sense for why Craig liked all of them at some point. I mean, it's interesting. I had a conversation with Lauren Collins, who played Paige, and we were talking about the storylines that may not have aged as well if they were happening today. And you know, I wonder, sort of after this sort of Me Too movement, this kind of this awareness of the behavior of men, how that would have played like Craig's storyline if that had happened today, because he was, you know, pretty toxic character. I was obviously very protective of him because it was an extension of me, and in fact, I had a lot of issue with that cheating storyline. I really I didn't like it. I remember talking to the producers and saying, I don't like this. Like, I don't want to do this. Because I felt like up until that point, I really believed everything Craig did. And it was, I believed it because it was stuff that I would have done. I could have made those choices. And then I really felt uncomfortable with the cheating storyline. And they, you know, the producer essentially said, tough shit. Like, you know, that's the role you're hired to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I would fight it on set. I remember Linda called me into her office to say it was the one time she said she didn't like my performance because I was resisting some of those cheating scenes. I think I was really, I don't know, I was trying to make it believable, or so that we understood like why someone would cheat. And Linda would say, Craig's being an asshole, so you need to just play that. And I found that difficult because that seemed so simplistic or something at the time. But I wonder if those storylines had happened today, how, you know, I think it would have been it wouldn't have come across as very nice. Not that it did back then, but I just think I don't know how that storyline would have aged today. But yeah, I mean, in terms of those sort of three young women that Craig had relationships with, I think it made a lot of sense why he was attracted and was good friends with all of them, and yeah, and those were some of the best scenes. I feel like the scenes with Cassie, scenes with Melissa, and the bipolar storyline, and then in the TV movie we did, Degrassi Hollywood, I loved that storyline with Stacy, who plays Ellie, even though they don't really end up together, but they sort of do, kind of. Yeah, I just thought they were all really, really great to work with. So yeah, I was pretty lucky to have them as scene partners.
Going off of Degrassi Goes Hollywood, iconic song, Rescue Me. I'd love to just talk in general about like the music, because I feel like that was such an integral part of your character, but also just like the DNA of Degrassi. Like, it's such a music heavy show.
I know.
What was that like for you?
It was great. My favorite episodes were probably Craig and his band episodes. It's probably when I felt the most like myself as the character, because that was so me. I was the kid who'd bring his guitar to set every day, and they quickly changed Craig from being a photographer to being a musician. I think when they realized like I didn't know anything about cameras, but I was on set like writing songs and wanting to jam with people. Yeah, you know, again, one of the gifts of Degrassi is that Jim McGraw, who's the music supervisor, he co-wrote the theme song, he wrote a lot of the music, would ask me to bring in songs for the band to sing or for Craig to sing.
And so you wrote them?
So I wrote the songs. I didn't. Funny enough, Rescue Me is like the one song I didn't write. I think they hired someone pretty famous to write that song, and I got to sing it. But all the other Craig band songs were either written by me or co-written with me and Jim. And again, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to. I didn't even realize at the time what an amazing thing that was to say to a young budding musician, do you have any songs? We'll put them on the show. If the producers like them, we'll put them on Degrassi. We'll have the band play them. Because they sounded like real sort of teenage garage band songs, which they were. So I loved the Battle of Bands episode was probably one of my favorite episodes to do, and I loved all the scenes in Joey's garage where the band would rehearse. It was such a cool set. I would have loved to have had that as for real in real life. It was such an amazing space. And we'd play music during lunch. Shane Kipple, who is Spinner, plays the drums, and so we would jam a lot during lunch. And yeah, so like you said, the music became such a big part of the show, and it was really cool that my character was the musician on the show. So I got to be a big part of a lot of those music episodes.
That's awesome. And now you mentioned the Battle of the Bands. I was gonna bring that up because I loved the way that like Craig handled that song that he wrote, because you have Ashley basically bashing him for cheating, but then he comes in and is like, yeah, I do suck. You're right. And I thought that was so interesting, the way that he was so self-aware, and it made sense to me now why looking back, he never had beef with any of these women after their relationships. Everyone kind of was able to forgive and forget and move on. I just thought that was so interesting. Yeah,
and I thought it was cool. I agree with you, and I thought it was really cool that the ending wasn't so black and white either. It's not like she's like, I forgive you and everything. It's like she's still pretty pissed at him, but they're kind of okay. It kind of begins that process of them being okay. And yeah, I thought you said that really well. I love that he had that self-awareness to be like, you're right, which I think is what Ashley was looking for. Yeah, I agree with you. I liked their song they sang.
Yeah.
I really liked their song they sang. I thought that actually should have won. My one beef with that episode, because I think Craig's band wins the Battle of Bands. I think it would have been better if Ashley's band won the battle, and I think it was deserving. I think it was a better song. That's my beef with it.
That's your hot take.
That's my hot take.
And I should have won.
Yeah.
And I love that while Craig is kind of becoming a rock star throughout the show, you're also, working on musical theater things outside of the show. I got a chance to see you in both SpiderMan, Turn Off the Dark, and Beautiful, the Carol musical on Broadway. And
No
that
way.
was so awesome. Yeah, I have a really terrible picture somewhere of us. My hair's a mess. And I was just like,
what are you talking about? You need to show it to me.
I have to go. I'll bring it up.
Do you have it, or you need to send it to me or something?
No, I have it. I have it.
Okay, you have it.
I'll bring it up. But in the meantime, while I look for it, can you tell me about like what it is about musical theater and just music in general that really speaks to you?
I grew up with musical theater, and I kind of started doing musical theater. My family vacations growing up were always a road trip to New York with my parents and my sister, and we'd go see a Broadway show. So I grew up loving. My sister is a singer. She's an amazing singer. Her name's Gabby Epstein. You should look her up. And as a young kid, I did a bunch of musicals. I played the Artful Dodger in Oliver at the sort of the major theater in Toronto when I was 13 years old, and that was probably my big break as a kid, because a lot of casting directors came and saw that, and that kind of began my on-camera young career. And then I stopped doing it for years. I mean, when I was doing Degrassi, I wasn't singing. I was singing a little bit on the show, and I guess becoming more interested in sort of bands, singing with bands and writing music. And after I left the show to go to theater school when I was 18. So I had this theater education and this background in singing in bands. And again, was very lucky that there was this slew of rock musicals happening at the time. And so I did the first national tour of Spring Awakening, which is where the music is so fantastic. And I loved, it had similar themes to Degrassi, but I loved this, these series of messages to young people. The show didn't talk down to young people, and was portraying sexuality and people finding themselves at a very young age without a lot of guidance. So I love doing that. I did the Green Day musical across the US. And then everyone was like, you got to move to New York. I mean, after doing these musicals, it felt like at that time, I wasn't really getting cast on camera, but people were interested in seeing me on stage. And so I moved to New York, and 5 weeks into New York, I ended up getting SpiderMan. Okay. Oh my God, look at you.
And I remember that you were like, I think you weren't supposed to be on, but then like, I think the guy got sick and then you were on, and I was like, this is the greatest day of my life. Yeah,
we were each other's, there was two of us that did it, and we were each other's standbys. So if one of us went down, the other went in. Crazy that you were there and saw it.
Yeah.
So of course, SpiderMan had this kind of infamous reputation. A lot of people got hurt doing the show before I joined it.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
I would never have thought that my dream, my Broadway debut, would be playing Spider-Man in Spider-Man the musical. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there I was. What an incredible year. And then went and did Beautiful, the Carole King musical, which was another gift. I grew up, of course, loving folk music, and loving Carole King and James Taylor and that kind of music, Paul Simon. And getting to be part of the Carole King musical was just, it was pretty cool, pretty thrilling.
Getting back to Degrassi, I got to say, one of my favorite arcs over the course of the show was Jay and Silent Bob going Canadian. Like, incredible. What was that like?
Yeah, what was that about? Like, how did that happen, right?
And they kept coming back. Like, they came back a lot.
Kept coming back. I think it was a joke when we first heard it. We were like Jay and Silent Bob are huge fans of Degrassi. Kevin Smith is gonna like direct an episode, and we were like, totally, like that is never happening, but great. And then he showed. I think he was supposed to direct, and then because of a scheduling conflict, he didn't direct the episode, but he was in the episode. It was so weird because I was such a massive fan, and there was Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, like, and they'd like come into, we were all like in tutor, we'd have to do school tutoring or whatever, and they just like come in and like hang out in the tutoring room. Like it was beyond absurd. They were so cool and so funny, and they were genuinely fans of the show. They used to talk about like when Kevin Smith was writing Clerks and working at oh god, I forget that this is like an embarrassing Jay and Silent Bob fact that I don't know, but whatever the Quick Stop, I think it was called, wherever they worked, that they would watch episodes of Degrassi, and that like really informed Kevin Smith's early writing and him wanting to be a filmmaker and all that stuff. Yeah, so it was just completely absurd and crazy, and they were just so like cool and lovely. So it was like one of those perks, like one of those gifts of the job. Oh yeah, on top of shooting it, I get to hang out with Jay and Silent Bob.
I love that Kevin Smith was like, I'm also going to just change the course of Degrassi history by having my version of Kevin Smith kiss Caitlin Ryan.
Oh yeah,
break up that whole relationship.
I think that might have been in his contract that he gets to kiss Caitlin. That was like part of the reason. Like he's like, I'll be on the show only if my fake kisses Caitlin, and he did. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like crazy, absurd. Can't really believe that happened. But yeah, and I've run into Kevin Smith, both of them, a few times since then, and they're just lovely, hilarious dudes. Still a huge fan.
They seem like they would be just down to earth dudes.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they came and did the Drake music video.
I was going to ask you about that next.
Again, like, oh, and Jay and Silent Bob are here. Like, just kind of absurd.
Going off of that, you've returned to the role of Craig for Degrassi Next Class and for Drake's I'm Upset music video.
Yeah.
What was it like returning those times? Was it different? Was it like, I mean, especially the music video, like, that must have been really fun.
It was really fun. Yeah, we all joked that only Aubrey could have pulled that off, like could have gotten everyone together. Yeah, we all didn't know really what it was. It was like very vague what was happening. It was a Degrassi reunion. It was also a music video shoot. Were we in the video? Were we just hanging out? He'd rented the old Degrassi lot, and his team so we all were like, I remember calling like everyone in the cast being like, are you guys going? Like, what is this? And almost feeling a little bit nervous. I was like, my biggest thing was like, don't make me dance to your song. Like, I love his music. I'm a huge fan, but just like, don't be like, now dance to the song. Right. And like, sure enough, we're shooting it and they're like, now everybody dance to the song. So it was like, oh my God, everyone was laughing at me. But yeah, it was great. We showed up, and immediately our fears were put to rest because Aubrey was there being just as lovely as ever, giving us big hugs. And he kept saying to me, nothing's changed, eh, Epstein? And in my head, I'm like, you're now the most famous rapper on the planet. Like, everything has changed. But I was like, yeah, man, totally. Nothing's changed. And, it became this kind of a high school reunion. Like I said, most of the cast never went to a real high school, and shooting Degrassi was kind of like our high school. So it was kind of like this high school reunion we never had. Everyone brought in drinks. Everyone's having a great. I mean, we shot till like 6 in the morning in the Degrassi school gym.
Oh wow!
Dancing to the Drake song, just like killing ourselves laughing with Jay and Silent Bob, and it was just one of those like, what is happening here moments. But we all just had the greatest time. There would be moments where we'd be joking and laughing, almost forgetting like it was a shoot, and realize that the camera was on us, and we're like, oh yeah, this is how we'd act at any, it was kind of real. It was kind of real.
It looked incredible. Like when they dropped that, I was like, I'm going to lose my mind. What?
I know.
What is happening?
I
and
know.
He was gonna like, call back his roots. I was like,
it's a cool move. I thought it was a cool move on his part. It was sort of like foreshadowing, because I think he opened the video on the Toronto Raptors center court, because they just lost in the semifinals. I forget to who, probably to LeBron. And then like that year the Raptors went on and won it like the next year. So it was like very foreshadowing.
You guys were like the lucky charm.
Yeah, we believe we are, for sure. It was one of those things where you wake up the next day and you're like, did that really happen? Like, was that a weird fever dream that I just had? And then you're hungover and you're like, nope, that definitely happened. Yeah, what can I say? It was just like it was a lovely shoot. Everyone had a really good time, and I thought it was a cool move on his part to do that. I thought kind of him poking fun at his roots and poking fun at Degrassi was kind of awesome. Principal
Simpson giving Jay and Silent Bob weed, like,
yeah, he's like dealing weed to Jay and Silent Bob. Yeah, they brought Ephraim, the shooter. They had him like back, and then like Drake and his crew like chase after him.
Yeah,
there's a lot of really funny things that happened in it.
Degrassi has had just such a huge legacy from like the 80s even till most recently the next class. Do you think that like you would like to see them bring it back again, and like if so, would you ever like want to reprise your role?
I haven't really thought about it. I could totally see them bringing back the show. I think the show will forever be relevant, because a show about portraying teenagers in a realistic way will always be personal to that generation of teenagers. So they absolutely could. Whether or not I would want to be part of it, I'd have to see what the script is like, what the kind of situation is. I mean, I could totally see, I don't know. Yeah, I could totally see Craig as like in the same way that Joey Jeremiah, his kind of dad, his stepdad, was part of the next generation. I could see him being a parent, or being I don't even know, like the guidance counselor or something, the music teacher, like something like that for sure. And who knows? I mean, knowing the team, I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to pull something like that off at some point. So who knows?
I would watch it. Degrassi is just one of those shows that like I don't care what they're doing. I will watch it for the rest of my life. I don't like when I have kids and it's if it hopefully comes back. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't know, what is that about? Does that remind you of your childhood?
I guess I like I said, I think that it really brings about this like family and community aspect of like, you've been following these people for so long. Like, I would love to know what Craig is doing. Did he make it big? Is he still touring with who was it? Pete Wentz, and did he
forgot about that, right?
Did he end up with any of these, with Manny or Ellie or Ashley or someone completely different? Like, I would love to know, like, is he, a music teacher now and has kids that are doing something else? I don't know.
For sure. They almost need to do like a special, just like a few episode specials to kind of tie in where people are. Yeah, I would be very curious where everyone is. It's true.
I'm curious for you. I feel like one of the big kind of couples that ended up together that I think a lot of people have thoughts about is Spinner and Emma. Did you ever have thoughts on,
people
like,
have thoughts on
marriage?
That. I don't have a good hot take for you on that. I because Spinner should have been with Jane, right?
I still really like Spinner and Paige. I mean, I know it was a long time ago.
Spinner and Paige, yeah, they were a great couple. You're right, they were a great couple. But Paige was sort of exploring herself a little bit.
That's true. I also like Paige with Alex. So
Paige and Alex were a really great couple.
You guys just all had so much chemistry. It's like I can't even choose.
It's so funny. They're like talking about it. It's almost like talking about high school relationships, which maybe lasted a few weeks, but at the time were like the biggest, most important thing. Were so dramatic at the time. I'm
talking like I was there. I wasn't even there.
Yeah, you were. You have a real strong opinion.
what do you think that like you hope people take away from Degrassi, 20 years later? And, if you have any maybe favorite moment or memory that kind of just like wraps up your experience there.
That's a great question. I mean, I've always prided myself in being part of a show that aimed to be realistic and provide some comfort to a lot of kids, to let them feel like they were friends with the characters, to let them feel like they were invested in these relationships that they had an opinion on, like you just now. And specifically, getting to be a small part in some of those specific storylines, like the bipolar storyline or the abuse storyline that Craig went through, or even the cheating storyline, the pregnancy storyline with Manny, the abortion episode. I mean, that was a really important episode, and I know a lot of kids saw it, and and to sort of to know that you had this audience. I really take pride in being part of something that was positive. It was fun. It wasn't just like, talking down to kids. It sometimes just showed kids being kind of shitty, and then having consequences for that. I really, I feel really blessed that I was part of that I got to play Craig. And I don't think I fully knew at the time how much it would mean to a lot of people years later. So it's funny. It's only been in the last few years that I think I've only truly realized how many people saw it and how much it meant to people, and maybe a deeper level than just some whatever after school special. Like a lot of people have seen like all the episodes multiple times. And so, what a gift. Again, I keep saying the word gift because that's kind of what Degrassi has felt like to me, just these series of gifts and that keep giving because even today I'm getting to talk about it and being reminded about things. And every interview I do will kind of open my eyes to things I never really thought about that have meant something to people. So that's my answer.
It literally is one of the most groundbreaking teen shows of all time, in my opinion. So
it's I think it's certainly paved the way for a lot of other shows. I don't think you'd see a lot of teen shows that are on today without Degrassi. And of course, you wouldn't have had Degrassi without like the original Degrassi and 90210 and the OC. I mean, there's certainly like that kind of line of teen shows and teen shows that continue to try to sort of push the envelope of what can be shown on TV, and striving to kind of represent teenagers. And it's funny now because I'm 34 and I'm I've played like dads now. Like it's such a funny, even in like teen shows, you know what I'm saying? It's funny and it's amazing to see how much further along a lot of nude shows are now. And so again, just like being a sort of a part of that is very cool.
Yeah, that's very interesting to be able to see kind of like all the sides of that, kid growing up and now the parent, seeing it from their perspective.
Well, and like the last time I spoke with Lauren Collins, she recently had a baby. And she was talking about wanting a show like Degrassi, like you were saying, wanting a show like Degrassi for her child, to kind of give them, a perspective, a positive influence, a bit of teaching in a way that parents can't fully do for a lot of that stuff.
Absolutely.
So yeah, again, just very, very, very cool to be part of it, and just mind blowing that it's still something people want to talk about, to be honest. And I'll just say, like, as an actor, it was also just like such an interesting role to play. I mean, I'm obviously the most biased, but I think Craig was the best character on the show. Like I kind of can't believe I got to do that, and all the things that he got to do, and all the conflicts I got to help portray, and all the research, and It was really, it really felt like it started my career in this really interesting way. And like I said, I left the show to go to theater school. Like I was really interested in acting, and I really felt like Degrassi was this kind of amazing education for a young actor to get to work with all these great directors and great people, and get to, for me, like portray all these interesting storylines that are still like very controversial today. I know there's like,
yeah, it was ahead of its
time.
time.
It's a very like sort of loaded character. There's a lot of people who have strong feelings on both sides, positive and negative, about the character. So what a cool thing to get to be at the center of that as a young actor. I feel very lucky.
Absolutely. And, you know, going off of that, I mean, you've had such an incredible career since, like you said, the musical theater. Also, something I'm very excited for, you joining the cast of one of my favorite new Netflix shows, Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
Can you tell us anything about that?
I'm so excited to see it. I'm also such a huge fan of that show. So yeah, was super excited to get to film everything and work with all those actors. Elliot Page was just so cool and so inspirational, and he's such a good actor. Mm-hmm. Forget about all the incredible inspirational stuff. Just to kind of work with someone like that who's been in the kind of movies that he's been in was really cool. I'm really excited for it. I think people are gonna really like it.
So you guys have already filmed? I'm
now finished filming. Yeah, they're pretty close to finishing this season. I play one of the members of the Sparrow Academy. So there was very little information in the comics about the Sparrow, but there's 2 pages, I think, at the end of one of the last comics about them. So I, of course, was like studying that and very interested how they were going to portray that.
I cannot wait. The Umbrella Academy is one of those ones I like dissect and like do deep dive.
It's kind of a character study. Mm-hmm. They really kind of delve into everyone's psyches and everyone's relationships in a really deep way, really funny way. And so, I love the writing on that show. I just think it's great. And the nice thing is this time I don't have a fear of like actually hurting myself from falling like when I did SpiderMan on Broadway. So that's cool.
That's good.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Is there anything else that you want to share about what you're working on?
I'm filming another show that hasn't been announced yet. So this is my lame answer that I'm not allowed to say what it is yet. And yeah, I since then I've really, like, one of the weird silver lining gifts of the pandemic has been getting to really get into music again. I think for a long time I'd stopped playing music. I'd stopped playing guitar and singing, and I really started again. I've been playing these series of outdoor concerts around Toronto. So that's been a really cool thing. Yeah.
Do you think that, once, things start opening back up again, Broadway's coming back, that you may head back to Broadway at any point?
I'd be so lucky if something like that happened at some point. I don't have any plans right now. And, my wife is here and my family's here. And I really, I'm a bit of a homebody. I really love Toronto right now. And there's so much that's filming right here in the city. So it's feels like a pretty good place for now. But man, at some point I would love to get back to New York and get to, perform in front of an audience like that in New York City. Would be such a dream. So maybe one day.
I appreciate your time. Big fan of yours. Obviously, I've been following your career for a long time. So
well, thank you. I thought you asked really thoughtful questions, and so I really appreciate it.
If you guys like this one, you can check out more Pop Culture Planet right over here. See ya.